Good morning. I am Michelle, and welcome to Prairie Acres Farm. Today, as always, we have a very busy day. Today, I am going to be making two types of cheeses plus butter. So the first one that I'm going to be making is going to be Colby Jack. I am totally out of Colby Jack, and so I have to make this up so that I am prepared for my Christmas market that is coming up in Lumberton, Texas on December 13th. So in order to make Colby Jack cheese, you literally have to make two different cheeses at the same time. And I'm going to swing you around so that you can see. So in my big Amish canner cheese pot, I've got just over 10 gallons of milk. And then in my 10-gallon brewer's pot, I've got roughly 9.5 gallons in that one, give or take. So what you need for Colby Jack. So for the Colby, you are going to need 2 gallons of milk. This can be store-bought and like the pasteurized store-bought. Just do not use the ultra pasteurized. It will not work for you. But you can use store-bought milk. And you will need 2 gallons of milk, whether it be store-bought or raw. I am using raw milk. So the other thing that you are going to need is, let me get my recipe card, a half teaspoon of Mazo 2. And this here's what it looks like. You are also going to need annatto, which is the colorant, and you are going to need rennet. And I've got a little bit left in here, but I do have another bottle. But I'm not sure if I'm going to need that new bottle or not. But so for the mesophilic or the Meso 2, for every 2 gallons, you are going to need a half a teaspoon. And for the annatto, you are going to need 1/4 teaspoon for every 2 gallons mixed in a 1/4 cup of cool non-chlorinated water. And then if you are using store-bought, you are going to need the calcium chloride. You are going to need 1/2 teaspoon of calcium chloride mixed into 1/4 cup of cool non-chlorinated water. The other thing that you are going to need is, like I said, the liquid rennet. You're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon of liquid rennet mixed in 1/4 cup of cool non-chlorinated water. And the other thing that you're going to need is salt, non-iodized salt. So I've used a pink Himalayan before. Now, as for salt, I'm not a big fan of the pink Himalayan. It just doesn't mix very well or dilute very well. So I prefer the cheese salt. But you could also use the kosher sea salt that is non-caking type. And I've got some of that that's going to be delivered today because the cheese salt that I did have, I ran out of. So you are going to need a type of cheese salt. The other tools that you're going to need is a thermometer. And I just got this, so I'm really stoked about that. And you're going to need your teaspoons. Now, because I am making such large quantities, I'm actually graduating to my bigger teaspoons. So that is what you're going to need for the Colby cheese. Now, for the Jack cheese, and this is a 2-gallon recipe, so 2 gallons of milk, you're going to need 1/2 teaspoon of MA 4001. I'm actually going to be using 4002 because I don't have 001, but it should still be fine. So you're going to need a half a teaspoon of that. Again, if you're using store-bought milk, your calcium chloride, and then your liquid rennet. So for the calcium chloride for the Jack, 1/2 teaspoon of calcium chloride and half teaspoon of liquid rennet. And these are mixed separately, but in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. And the other thing that you're going to need is 2 tablespoons of non-iodized salt, cheese salt, pink Himalayan, the kosher salt, the sea salt, etc. As long as it's non-iodized, you should be fine. Now, in order to start all of this, the first thing we have to do is we have to heat up our milk. Give me one sec. So this is the book that I use for my artisan cheese making. I just got another new book and I haven't had the time to explore it yet, but this is what I'm going to be using. is an artisan cheese making at home, and I have my pages marked. And so for the Jack cheese, which is going to be in our round pot, we have to bring that temperature up to 86. And then for the Colby, we have to bring that temperature up to 86. So both of these pots will come to temperature at 86. Once the temperature is up to 86, you add your cultures, you wait 5 minutes, you stir it in very well, and you let it ripen. Now, when we get to that process, I will let you know. Oh, before I forget, this video is going to be in 2 parts. I'm going to be making the Colby Jack first. And then the second part, I'm going to be making a brand new cheese. Now, I want to give a shout out to Jennifer. She has a YouTube video, and her YouTube channel is Milkslinger. And I watched her video on this particular type of cheese. It's called Dragon's Milk and Fire. So I'm like really stoked about doing this. And I am going to bring you along for that journey. So that's why I'm separating this video into 2 parts, because I want to concentrate on the Colby Jack first. And then I want to get to the Dragon's Milk and Fire. When I get to that part, I will let you know the ingredients and the steps that you need in order to be able to produce this cheese in your own kitchen. So while I wait for the milk to warm up, I will bring you back when both temperatures reach 86. So I will see you in a few minutes. All right, so our milk has come up to temperature. And so I'm going to just move the camera around so that you can see what I'm doing. All right, so we're going to work with our big pot here. This here is currently at 85, almost 86. So I'm turning it's exactly 86. And so for this one, which is going to be the Jack, we are going to mix in the MA 4002, and we need a half a teaspoon for every 2 gallons. So, and I have almost 10 gallons there. So let me get my half a teaspoon, and we're just going to sprinkle it on top as we normally do. So that's 2, 4, and I'm gonna just put the rest in. All right, so there is that. And we're gonna let that rehydrate for between 3 and 5 minutes. So I'm gonna set my timer for 3. And then while that's hydrating, we're going to move to the Colby. So for the Colby, we need a half teaspoon of the Manzo 2. And I'm just sprinkling it on top, just like we've normally been doing. 4, 6, 8, and 10. So I have just over 10 gallons in here. But one thing to consider, and I just learned this recently, is that with the raw milk, you don't need as much culture and rennet as I have been using. So I'm not too concerned, even though I was a little bit short on the Jack on the MA 4002. I'm not too worried about that. It will do its thing. So we're going to give this a couple minutes to rehydrate, and then we'll stir it in. Now, with the Colby, we are going to let it ripen for 1 hour. Let me make sure. Yes, 1 hour. And then once it ripens, then we will add the annatto. And then for the Jack, it ripens for 1 hour as well. So I am going to do a little bit of an experiment today. I normally don't put calcium chloride in my cheeses because I'm using raw milk. However, what I have recently learned is that if I added just a little bit of the calcium chloride, there is a possibility that I am going to get more curds, because the calcium chloride is going to adhere to the fat molecules in the milk, and thereby it should increase the curd yield. So I want to try that and see if it makes a difference. So that was my timer. So I know pretty much how much cheese to expect from each yield because I've made it many times. So I know if I was just making the Colby and I was doing just the 10 gallons, which I normally use, I normally get around 9 to 10 pounds of cheese. So I want to see if that yield will increase. So this time around, I'm going to add some calcium chloride, and you normally add the calcium chloride, let's see, after the ripening process. So after the ripening process on both cheeses, then I'm going to add the calcium chloride. And then also for the Colby, I'm going to be adding the annatto and then the rennet. So once this has ripened, I will bring you back. But for right now, I'm going to bring you back over and we are going to stir this in. Actually, let's do this one because my ladle is right here. So I'm just going into an up and down motion. And what this is going to do is it's going to help that culture to get all the way through your milk and inoculate it. And you only need to do this for about 30 seconds. All right, so there's that one. And I'm going to try and keep my hand out of the frame. So I'm left-handed, like very left-handed. So this here is kind of cumbersome for me. But my hand is going to be in the way, literally, if I do it with the left hand. It's just going, all you're going to see is my arm and my hand. And I'm trying to be very cognizant of what I'm doing as I'm filming. So I'm going in that up and down motion, moving that milk. All right, there is that. And if you notice in the back, I've got another pot of milk that I'm going to be making into the dragon's milk and fire. So I've got that, which is roughly 4.5 gallons because I've got it all the way filled. Plus, I've got another 3 gallons on the counter. So once these are done, then I'm going to clean up this pot and I'm going to transfer that milk into one of these vessels and then add the additional milk in order to make a very good yielding cheese. So we're going to let this ripen for 1 hour and I will see you back. All right, friends, so we are back. Our milk has been ripening for almost an hour. It's like 30 seconds left. So I'm going to turn that timer off so it doesn't buzz. And so over here on my workstation, let me bring you down a little. I've got cool water, and this is from my fridge. It's filtered water, but I've used it so many times and it's never caused an issue. And I've got all of my other ingredients. So the first pot that I'm going to deal with is going to be the Jack cheese. And so for that, I need a half a teaspoon of calcium chloride and I also need a half a teaspoon of rennet. So like I said, we're going to do this experiment. And so for every 2 gallons, I need a half a teaspoon. I don't have much calcium, so we'll just see. Okay, I am going to use 1 teaspoon total of calcium chloride because I want to save the rest for the Colby portion. So in that, I'm going to mix a little bit of water, about a quarter cup, and let's swing you around. And so for the calcium chloride, we're just going to add it to our milk, just like we do with the rennet, and then we're just going to mix it in. I'm kind of curious to see if this is going to make any difference. I would like to be pleasantly surprised. And I'm going in an up and down motion, getting to the bottom of the pot so that it's evenly distributed. All right. So there's that, and we'll bring you back over. So the next thing that we need to add so the next step for the Jack is going to be the rennet. So I'm just going to about a quarter cup of cool water, and then we need a half teaspoon of the rennet. 2, 4, 6, 8, and a little bit. Because remember, the round pot, I only have just under 10 gallons. So we're just going to pour it in and we're going to stir it. And you only want to mix this or move your ladle up and down for about 30, 45 seconds, no more than that. You just want to make sure it's all diluted or mixed in really well. Okay, I can feel it starting to get sluggish. So I'm going to still my milk and put the lid back on. So this will ripen for about 40 minutes. And so for this one, so now we're going to move on to the Colby portion. So for the Colby portion, we're going to follow the same exact routine. I'm going to put a quarter cup of cool water, and I am going to use the rest of my calcium chloride, and let's see how much I get out of that. Okay, I got just over a half a teaspoon. So we'll just see how it goes. Like I said, this portion is nothing more than an experiment just to see how it works out. So if you are using the calcium chloride and annatto, you want to mix it in before the rennet, and all of that cream is getting mixed back in, which is good. We want that. All right. So the next portion is going to be the annatto. So here I'm going to pour in my quarter cup of cool water. And then for the annatto, you are going to need a quarter teaspoon for every 2 gallons. And I keep it in this little baggie just in case it was to leak or something. Okay, and this is a half a teaspoon, so I'm just going to use that. So that's 4, 8, and a little bit. Now, annatto will stain, so you want to be very cognizant of that. It will stain your cheesecloth, it will stain your fingers, it will stain everything. So as a recap, we've added the calcium chloride. This here is the annatto, and all the annatto is going to do is just going to change the color of your milk, and it's going to make it that bright orange, hopefully. And we're going to mix this in just like we did with the calcium chloride. Now, it looks very light at the moment, but this is one of those times where looks are deceiving because this milk will turn a bright orange during the aging process. And so the very first time that I did this, I looked at this color and I go, oh my goodness, this is not orange enough. And so I put in a little extra annatto, and I wished I hadn't because it was a bright orange. So lesson learned. All right, so that's that. And so now, and then I'm just going to put in my quarter cup of water. And yes, I'm using the same measuring cup. I'm not worried about it. And then we need half a teaspoon for every 2 gallons of rennet. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So remember, I've got just a little bit over 10 gallons, so this is going to be plenty of rennet for it, regardless. So with raw milk, at least from what I understand, you don't need as much rennet, but I'm still a fairly new cheesemaker, so I'm following at least most of the directions. So we just pour that in. There we go. And then we're going to same up and down motion. Let's just see how it goes through. And again, you only want to do this for about 30, no more than 45 seconds, because rennet tends to set up fairly quickly. And you can tell because the mass, the density gets thicker. All right. All right, so we are going to put the lid back on. Excuse me for reaching over. We want to keep that heat in, and we're going to set our timer for 40 minutes, and there you go. So we're going to let the 2 pots of milk set up or coagulate, and then we'll test it for a clean break. So I will see you back in 40 minutes. All right, friends, so our curds or our milk is ready to be cut, and I just remembered, oh, there it is. I needed my little curd cutter here. So I'm going to swap you around, and there we go. So we're going to do our curd test. And there is whey on top, so that's really good. Oh, look at that beautiful clean break. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this in cubes, and then I am going to come through with a very extra large whisk that I just recently purchased because I needed a way to get down to the very bottom of these pots, and my curd cutter just is not working to do that. And normally I stand up on a stool for this, but because I'm gonna come through with the whisk, I'm not going to worry about standing on a stool at this moment. And I am not getting to the bottom of this, so the whisk is going to come in handy for getting to that. So I'm going to cut the curds, and then I'm going to let them rest for a few minutes, about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back in with the whisk, and I am going to get the curds even smaller. Oh, these are really nice milk cheese curds. And they are already releasing whey, which is nice. So I'm just gonna come through very quickly at a 45. And like I said, I'm going to be coming through with the whisk and cut this down even further. So I'm not too terribly concerned with getting it all uniform at this moment. This here is just going to give it a head start. Now, where I got that extra large whisk, my husband and I, we went to Commercial Kitchens in Beaumont on Veterans Day, and we picked it up. And before I left, though, I made sure that it was going to be long enough to get to the bottom of that pot. So I measured it. And it's going to be the same thing with this one here. This one here is going to be the Colby. And I'm going to come through with the whisk with this one as well. This here is just going to be a rough cut, if you will, just to start releasing some of that whey. Oh, these curds are phenomenal. So I did not do a curd test on this pot because I knew that the Jack pot was ready, and I just knew that this one would be ready as well. So that's why I didn't do the curd test on this one. And there we go. So we will let these rest just for a few minutes and put this back on. So I'm going to come through here in just a couple minutes. Let me set my timer so I don't forget. All right, so I set it for 3 minutes, but the large part has already been setting for 2. So by the time I get to it, that'll be 5. And then the large pot of Colby will be ready for an additional breakdown of the curds. Now this here is the whisk that I got at Commercial Kitchens. It's 22 inches. And this here is going to allow me to get down into the very large, deep, round pot. I'm very excited about this. I know it sounds so corny, but when you need that extra tool that is going to be a game changer in your cheese making, you kind of get excited about it. Okay, so once we get all of the curd cut up into smaller bits and pieces with the whisk or the balloon whisk, we're going to be raising the temperature on both of the pots. So on the Jack cheese, we are going to raise the temperature to 102 over 40 minutes. And the same thing for the Colby, except for on the Colby, the temperature will be raised to 104 over 40 minutes. So you want to keep your temperature low, your heat or your flame. So I have a gas stove, so I will obviously have a flame. But if you have an electric stove, just keep that down low until you get an idea of how your curds are heating up. And then you can adjust the temperature there out, just getting to 102, 104 respectively over 40 minutes. And then after that, we will be draining out of the way off of the curds. So hopefully my dishwasher will finish in time. If not, I'll move the jars out of my sink because we had so many jars this week. It's taking 3 loads to wash and sanitize all of our milk jars. If it's not ready, then I'll just move them out of the way and then we can drain the curds. Now these are going to be very heavy, so I'll have to use a measuring cup until it's manageable. And then that is when the fun starts. So it is time. And there we go. So let me swing you around. I'm going to move that. So look at that whey that is already on top of that. So, and then all you're going to do is you're just going to put your whisk in, plop it down, and it's just going to help break up those curds even more. And this is all you're going to do, and you're going to do the same thing for your Colby cheese. So when I am making 2 batches of cheese like this for the Colby Jack, I like working with the Jack first because I don't have to worry about the annatto mixing in my curds. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be a big deal because it's going to get mixed in eventually, but this here is all we're doing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it up and make sure I get those bottom curds, because this here is where I have the most difficulty with the curds, or with this with this pot, is because it's deep and I know that my previous utensils were not getting down to the bottom. And so this here just allows me to get down to the bottom. And I like this. And so far, this is working out so well. So I've seen this trick done by Jennifer of Milkslinger. So if she ever comes to my channel and watches a cheese video of mine, I want to say thank you, because just by watching your videos, I have learned a lot. And like I said, I'm a new cheese maker. I've only been making cheese for about a year, but really heavily over the last, I would say 8 months, I've really increased my cheese making. So I have learned so much from you, Jennifer, and I just want to thank you. And I would never have thought of using a whisk to break up my curds. Alrighty. So there is that. I am like really happy with the way this is turning out. Alright, so there is that one. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn the heat on, and I've got it on low, and I'm going to put the lid on just for a few minutes. So what you're going to want to do, and this is where it gets really tricky when you're making 2 cheeses at the same time, is you're going to want to stir these. The directions say continually, but I just kind of take turns as I am cooking my curds between the pots. And so like with this one, same thing. We're just going to break up those curds. And you can see that on the way we've got an orange cast, and that is from the annatto. So this here is going to have some rather larger curds in it because I did not go out of 45. But the whisk, the bloom whisk here, is going to help that. So I'm just making sure that I get down to the bottom And just like with the round pot, but this here is rectangle, obviously. I'm just going to make sure I get those curds. And then when we start stirring, if there's any large curds, you can just break them up with your hands. It's not going to matter a whole lot. So there are some larger ones down at the bottom. So just bring them up to the top. I like using the tools as much as possible, just because I can. So you are going to get some big curds, so just make sure you get them either with the whisk or with your hand. Now there are some cheese makers that don't even bother with this step. They just break everything up with their hands. I'm not that confident yet. Alright, we're going to call that good, and we're going to turn the flames on. So we're going to come back over to this pot, whoops, in hot water up to, well, almost up to my shoulder. All right, so I am all sanitized, and I'm going to take my rings off today. Because when I have my hands in the way, obviously when you have your hands in water, your fingers shrink a little, and I don't want to lose my rings in the curds. So remember, we want to bring these curds up to 102 on this pot and 104 on the Colby pot. Now, if your whey gets way out of hand, in other words, you can't work without making a mess, take some of it out. It's not going to hurt it. So when I come across larger pieces, I just break it up with my hand. And this eye in particular kind of heats up my pot a lot faster than I want it to. So what I will probably end up doing is turning that heat off in intervals so it doesn't get too hot too quickly. Because the whole point of this is you want to heat your curds to cook them, but you don't want to cook them too fast because you need that heat in order to meld both cheeses together, thus making your Colby Jack. So the thing with this, so that there are negatives and positives with having gas. The positives is it heats up very quickly, but the negative is it heats up too quickly sometimes. And I've got this particular eye on the lowest heat setting there is. Look, see, there's this card right here, so I'm just going to break it up. That's all you do. You want to keep your curds moving because you don't want them to mat. And if there's any large chunks, just break it up. Oop, I just made a mess. Alright, so we're going to let that one sit for a minute. Well, first I'm going to get a temperature reading. Right now it's at 87.6 and we need it to come up to 102. And then on this one, wow, that's hot already. So I'm just breaking up these larger curds. See, you can see the orange already. It doesn't look a whole lot like anything at the moment, but trust me, it will. Ouch. Yeah, so just be mindful of those hot spots on your curds. Keep your curds moving so that it doesn't scorch. Ouch! That one hurt. And I've got these on the lowest setting on my stove. Oh, there's a big piece. And that's all you do. Just break it up. Trying to get the curds off of the hot spots so it doesn't overcook my curds right away. Whoa, there's a big mess, so let's get that broken up real quick. So this is the stage where, I mean, you gotta be able to work between both of your pots and get things done fairly efficiently so that your curds don't scorch. Okay, I'm gonna give it another turn just to move them around. So at this stage, because of the heat, they like to mat up really quickly. So you gotta just keep moving your curds around. And now that I've got it off of the bottom, for the most part, I'm not too worried about them sticking. But I had to get those curds off of the hot spots or where the burners have a fire to it. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to take the temperature, see what the temperature is. 98.4, and we need to bring it up to 104. All right, so I've got those temperatures down as much as I possibly can. So those should be fine for a few minutes while I take care of this one. So I might have to remove some of this whey so I don't spill it. But these are looking really nice. So all I'm doing is I'm coming up underneath the curds and I'm just breaking them up. So I can feel a mass right here, and that's where the hot spot was. So I'm just going to break those up. All right, so we've got approximately 40 minutes, well, actually 30 minutes now, to continually stir these curds. And so I'm not going to make you wait through all that. So I will see you back in about 30 minutes when these are ready to get drained. All right, see you in 30 minutes. All right, so we are back and both pots are up to their respective temperatures. The Jack is up to 102 and the Colby is up to 104. So now what I've got to do, and hopefully it won't make a huge mess, is I've got to empty out these pots and drain it. So in my sink, I just finished washing it and sterilizing it, and I've got my big colander here, and I've got it lined with butter muslin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a measuring cup right here, and I'm going to start dipping out the whey and some of the curds, at least to lighten the load, until I get to the point where I can lift the pot and manage it. So that is the most difficult part for me because it is incredibly heavy. And normally I would wet the butter muslin, but because I'm going to be putting a lot of whey in here, I'm not too worried about it at the moment. So all I'm going to do is just start taking some of this whey and putting it in there. And that's all I'm going to be doing. And I'm going to do this for both pots. Now, once I get both pots emptied and into the colander, I will bring you back because there's just no point in having the camera on for all of that because it's just manual labor. All right, so I will see you as soon as all of the curds are in the colander. All right, so we have all of our curds into our colander, both the Jack and the Colby. So all I'm doing at this moment is I'm just breaking it up a little bit or milling it, as you will. And now I'm going to incorporate both of the cheeses so that I get the orange and the white intermixed. This is probably the most labor intensive because the curds like to mat at this point. And so all you're going to do is just break it up. And then once you get it all nice and incorporated, then you're going to add your salt. And I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. Let's get this all broken up and incorporated. There is a lot of curds in here. I'll be interested to see what the final weight is on all of this. So all I'm doing is just kind of wringing it between my fingers, just breaking this up as much as I can because you want a nice even distribution between the orange and the white. And as you can see, I'm just going from trying to get to the bottom and break that up and mix it in all at the same time. For really big pieces, you know, such as this, just break it up. the more you can break up these large curds, the more marbled your cheese will look, which is what you're going for. All right, so I am going to bring you back when I get this done, but before I add the salt. So I will see you in a minute. All right, so I have got the curds as mixed up as I'm going to at this moment. It's just so full that it keeps wanting to spill over. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in some of the salt, mix it up, and put it in the mold. And it's 2 tablespoons of salt for every 2 gallons of milk. All right, so I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna mix it up, and then I'm gonna put some of this into our mold. And what this is going to do, obviously, is to add flavor, but it's also going to allow for more whey to escape from the curds. And this here is the part that I kind of don't like because my hands get really abraded from the rough texture of the salt and the curds. But that is part of what happens. Yeah, they're already wanting to mat up really well, so, and if that happens to you like it is to me, just break it up as best as you can, working as quickly as you can. See, that was a big piece. I've got to break that up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start putting this into the form or the mold because I got to get to the bottom and salt that because I just can't get to it with this much curd in there. And I did wet my cheesecloth or my butter muslin before I put it into the form. And I'm spilling. All right, so I got the other container filled up. And I'm going to add more salt. And I am going to have to get a spoon or something to help stir this because it's tearing my hands out. 3, 4. That'll be good for right now. So once I get this broken up with the spurtle here, it'll make getting that salt in there a lot easier without tearing up my knuckles. And if you hear my dog bark, it's because my mail lady just arrived with my salt. So I used the Morton canning and pickling salt because I was added my cheese salt. And I have a ton of pink Himalayan, but honestly I don't like using the pink Himalayan for my cheese because I just feel it creates a much grainier texture, and so I prefer not to use it. But that's a canning and pickling salt. It's a non-iodized salt, so I am not worried about using it. All I'm trying to do is just get these curds from the bottom, break them up, and fill up another mold. Now, because I'm adding salt to the curds at this point, I don't need to brine the cheese. So that takes a lot of hours out of this cheese making process, which I kind of like that. See where it's all clumped together? Just break it up. because once it's under pressure, it'll go right back to being squished. It just helps filling the forms or the molds when it's a lot more manageable. There, see, I'm starting to get to where I can move these curds around. I feel the salt on them. I think, at least from what I'm seeing, this is going to be a beautiful cheese. Boy, that salt is stinging my fingers because I really abraded it. Abraded my knuckles. This happened last time I did this cheese. I wonder if I can get disability or wounded pay, but this is starting to move a lot better. I'm happy about that. So I'm just breaking up these really, really big pieces because I'm really trying to get a nice cohesive marbling between the two cheeses. Now, if you wonder if you've put enough salt in it, taste it. Use your senses. Whoa, that one's salty. And it's squeaky. So, that tells you that you cooked it long enough. Yep, they're both squeaky. That means you cooked it good. And it's got plenty of salt in it, at least for my liking. Alrighty, so now I'm just going to fill up this form. Yes, I'm overfilling it just a little bit because once you put pressure on this, it is going to sink down. But I think that's as full as I want to take it. Mostly just so I don't make a huge mess. And I'm going to flip you around so you can see what I'm doing over here. Alright, so this here is the first form that we filled up. And I'm pressing it down. And then underneath these, I've got these little trays. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to stack it. Hopefully. Alright, so I've got a plan B. So if you are in the situation in which I am in at this moment where your follower will not go on top because it's really full, I've got these little cutting boards that I bought for making cheese, and all I'm going to do is put that on top of there, get it a little bit more centered, and then take this dowel out and put that in. And then as this compresses, then I'll be able to get that follower on. Okay, so what I do next, sorry for the delay there, but I was getting my jar of water ready. So, as you can see, some of the liquid is already coming out, and that is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this on here, and in an hour or so, oops, I didn't get that all the way through. There we go. Okay, let's raise it up a little bit more. These dowels are a pain in the tush. Okay. There we go. So, this here, as soon as it compresses a little bit, then I'll take this off and see if I can get my follower on. And this is a really good weight. So let me show you. So down here you can see the whey coming out, and it's good. It's like not coming out like a waterfall, because one of the things that you do when you're pressing your cheese is you don't want to press it too heavy to begin with. You want to be able to increase your weight as you go. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to see if I can get my follower on now. And I can. Beautiful. I wonder, can I fit that in there? No, not yet. So, there's that. And get my dowel. Alrighty, so we are set with this one for the time being. So this will sit in this press for about an hour, and then I will flip it and continue pressing. So for the Jack cheese, or for this, what we are going to do is, okay, it says press at 5 pounds of pressure for 1 hour. Just get it to where it's not a waterfall. You want it to weep, but not a waterfall. So, and I know I've got more than 5 pounds of pressure, so I've got about 10 pounds of pressure on there. And in an hour, remove, flip, and then you are going to put it back under probably a good 15, 20 pounds of pressure, if not a little bit more, for 12 hours or overnight. So that is what we're going to do. So I will see you back here in just a few minutes. I'm going to finish filling up my other mold with some more Colby Jack cheese. So we'll see you in a minute. All right, so all of my cheese is in the presses. So this one here, I have to wait until it goes down a little bit more before I can put the follower on. But at least it will compress it to the level of the mold, which is fine with me at the moment. So as soon as it sinks down a little bit more, I can put the follower back on, and it should be fine. So in about an hour, I will flip all of these, and then it'll sit overnight for 12 hours. So I am going to clean up all of my messes, and then I'm going to end this video, this portion, and then we will get started on the dragon's milk and fire. Sorry, I'm getting tired. It's been a very long day already, and I've still got so much work to do. So for this first part, for part 1, it was the Colby Jack cheese. Again, we'll flip it in an hour, and then it'll stay in the mold for 12 hours or overnight. So yeah, it'll be overnight. But come back and join me for part 2, where we make the dragon's milk and fire. All right, we'll see you back. Thanks. Well, hello friends, and welcome to part 2 of our very long cheese making day. So earlier today, you saw me make the Colby Jack. Now I am going to be making the dragon's milk and fire. Again, I would like to give a shout out to Jennifer of Milkslinger, because this is where I got the recipe from. And I have learned from her mistakes, or at least I hope I did. So the first thing that we're going to need is, of course, milk. So the recipe that she has calls for 8 gallons. Well, I have roughly 10 gallons of milk in there. And it also calls for MA11, or what Jennifer uses is she uses her own clabber. I'm in the process of making my clabber, and as a test, I tried to do a yogurt last night, and it didn't set up. So I believe that it's because my clabber just isn't ready. In order for you to use clabber, you need either the 4th or 5th generation, and I was trying to do it with the 2nd generation. So I think that's why my yogurt did not set up. But I'm not gonna let that go to waste. So, and that's why my milk was a little clumpy in there, because even though it didn't set, the cultures were there, so I'm going to use that for my yogurt. So what you will need for the dragon's milk and fire is 8 gallons of milk, MA11 or 2 cups of clabber, yogurt, 1 to 2 cups, depending on how strong your yogurt is. If you are going to use store-bought, you have to use calcium chloride, especially if it doesn't have very strong cultures. My recommendation is, if you're going to use store-bought yogurt, to get the Greek yogurt. Don't have anything with any sugar, any sweeteners, no flavors, no fruit. It has to be straight up Greek yogurt with live culture. If you're using a store-bought, I would probably err on the side of caution and use a full 2 cups. If you are making your own yogurt, then you could probably get away with 1 cup. As it pertains to the MA11, I personally don't have MA11, but upon some investigation, some substitutes that you could use is Floridanica, which I have, and Thermofill type B. And the reason why I'm going to use the Thermofill is because this has to come up to very high temperatures. You start off with a 98-degree temperature for your milk. So, and then through the course of cooking, you're going to raise your temperature up to 118. So I'm going to use the Thermofill culture for that. The other ingredients that you are going to need is, you're going to need red pepper flakes. You're going to need black peppercorns. You're going to need a bag of chilies, ancho chilies. You are going to need your rennet, and you are going to need kosher salt, sea salt, or a non-iodized salt. So what we're going to do right now is, I've already got my burner started. I'm going to heat the milk up to 98 degrees. And so you need a thermometer. You also need your measuring spoons. And I'm going to use a slotted spoon and my whisk, my balloon whisk. So while my milk is heating up, I am going to cut the chilies. Now you can take the seeds out, or you could leave the seeds in. It's totally up to you. I'm going to take majority of them out. Now what Jennifer does is chops them up. What I'm going to do, this is where I'm going to deviate from her recipe, is I'm going to put mine in a food processor and chop it up a little bit finer, because I personally don't like really large peppers in my food. So I'm going to use a food processor and chop these up a little bit more. The other thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a mortar and pestle, and I'm going to take my peppercorns, put it in there, and I'm going to basically just crush up the black peppercorns, and you only need a tablespoon of this. To reiterate, you need 8 gallons of milk, either store-bought or raw milk. If you're going to use store-bought, be sure to use your calcium chloride mixed in cool non-chlorinated water, and it'll be about a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon. MA11 or 2 cups of clabber. So I'm going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of thermophilic type B and Floridanica, and I'm going to measure those out where it's about a 1/4 teaspoon of each. Because I'm using raw milk, I believe that that is going to be a good culture mix. Again, you're going to need 2 cups of yogurt, 1 tablespoon of red pepper flakes, 1 tablespoon of black peppercorns, 1 teaspoon for every 8 gallons of rennet. And this here is my rennet. And I'm almost out, but I do have another bottle in my cheese fridge. So once you bring your milk temperature up to 98 degrees, you're going to add your culture or cultures, and you're going to let it ripen for 1 hour. You're going to need to put these into a saucepan with just enough water to cover your spices, and you're going to bring it to a boil. Later on in the recipe, you are going to simmer all of these. You're going to simmer the black peppercorns and the red pepper flakes together, and you're going to simmer your ancho chilies in a separate saucepan. Now when you get to adding all of this, you can use the liquid or you can drain it off. It's totally up to you. I'm probably going to use the liquid. Oh, I almost forgot the most important ingredient. 1 second. You are going to need the Dragon's Milk beer. It is a bourbon barrel aged stout. So I've got 4 bottles here, and I believe that will be plenty for what we're doing. The recipe calls for 1 liter of the beer. The other thing with the beer is we're going to bring that up to a simmer. I don't want it to boil, but I do want it to cook out the alcohol because I am a non-drinker, and so I don't want the alcohol content in my cheese, but I do want the flavor. Okay, so this here is a 1/2 tablespoon, and we need 1 tablespoon. And this is a fresh bottle of peppercorn, so I know it's not been contaminated. Okay, so I've got roughly 10 gallons of milk, so I'm going to put in an extra tablespoon just because. And all you want to do is just rough chop the peppercorns. Don't bang your peppercorns in a pestle because it'll jump out, as mine just did. Actually, I got a better idea. I've got the food processor out. Let's make use of it. I don't know about you, but I do not like working any harder than I have to. And now we're going to add our red pepper flakes. And again, it calls for a tablespoon, so I'm going to use 1.5 tablespoons. And then we just want enough water to cover your spices. About 1 cup. And I'm going to set it on the stove and bring it up to a boil. Alright, so these are our ancho chilies. I'm just going to rough cut these because I'm going to put them in the food processor and get some of these seeds out because we do not need all of these seeds. Alright, so I am going to finish this up and then I will bring you back. Alright, so I chopped the chilies and the food processor on high for 2 minutes, and so it cut it down pretty good. There's still some big pieces in there. Oh, I hope it's UPS because I'm expecting new molds today. Anyways, if these are still too big for you, you can still chop them down more, but I'm gonna see what they look like and go from there. Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover the chilies with water, and we're going to bring it to a boil. As soon as it starts to boil, we're going to turn the heat off and let it cool. And I will bring you back when we're ready. Alright, we'll see you in a few minutes. Alright friends, so our milk is up to temperature. It is 98 degrees. Let's double check. Okay, 99.5. But it will be fine. I am going to add in my culture. Alright, so this is 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm gonna just put this in here. I'm just gonna use 1/2 teaspoon of that, and then 1/2 teaspoon of the Flora Danica. We're gonna let this rehydrate for 5 minutes, stir it in like we normally do, and then we are gonna let it ripen for 1 hour. So I will see you back in an hour. We are back. Our milk has been ripening for an hour, and now we're gonna get ready to do the rennet. So for the rennet, I've got some cool water here. Now the instructions say 1 teaspoon of rennet for 8 gallons of milk. And I know I've got more than 8 gallons, so I am going to do a little bit more than a teaspoon. Okay, so there's 1 teaspoon and then a little bit more because I've got almost 10 gallons of milk. So here we go. Just gonna pour that into the milk, and then I'm going to use my ladle. So once you add your rennet, you are going to want to let it set. Well, the instructions said 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm going to do 30 because I've got more milk than what Jennifer used. All right. So I will see you back in 40 minutes and we'll cut the curds and we'll move on to our next step. So it is time to cut the curds. And so first I'm going to cut it in cubes, and then I'm going to take my big balloon whisk and I'm going to go in, break it up in further pieces. Now my curds look really weird because I used that yogurt that I tried to make, and I'm just kind of hoping it all turns out. But it's cutting good. It just looks really funky. Alright, so I'm going to bring you in and let you see, because I'm not going to try and hide anything. As you can see, it looks kind of weird. But underneath that top layer are the curds. So I think it's just a result of my failed experiment on trying to use clabber for the culture. So when you lift up the curds are beautiful. It's just that top layer that looks really weird. So I'm just taking the balloon whisk and breaking those curds down even more. Once I do this, then we're going to let it rest for about 10 minutes. And then we are going to slowly heat the curds over a 20-minute period up to 118 degrees. Yeah, the curds look awesome. It's just that top layer that looked really wonky. I'm not concerned about it at this moment, but that's how we learn. All I'm doing at this moment is breaking up the very large curds on the bottom with the balloon whisk, because there are some very large curds. And because I didn't use my other curd cutter, I just had the columns. This is going to be a very long night for me. It's already 7:30 p.m. But I have to get this done tonight because I am going to be out of town tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to be out of town until Saturday. I'll get home Saturday, so I've got to get this done, and I've got to get the butter made tonight. So I've already cleaned my hands. I did it off camera. And all I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to gently stir the curds. Then I'm going to turn the heat on and slowly bring the curds up to 118. So I just want to break up some of these large curds. So when I was getting the milk ready or heating it up, it did get a little bit warmer than 98, but not by much. And I think it's one of the reasons why my curds are floating like they are. Normally they don't float like this. And the other thing that I think as well is the clabber and the yogurt that I used. I think it introduced a different culture. So I'm just gonna roll with it. All right, I am gonna let that rest for 10 minutes and then I am going to start heating the curds up. So I will see you back in 10 minutes. All right, so our curds have been resting for almost 8 minutes, but I'm going to start stirring. I've already got the heat on low, and so I'm just going to start making sure that the curds get all in the water, and we're going to bring it up to 118 degrees. So all we're going to do is just, see, it's already forming up already. So just going to break this up. I'm just breaking the curds up because I want them to start cooking. After a while, I'll have to use a spoon because 118 degrees is a little warm for my hand. Now the thing with raw milk is this here may firm up and cook a little bit quicker than store-bought milk, so keep that in mind. And one of the ways that you can tell whether your curds are cooked all the way through is really by the feel. So I can tell just by the curds that I'm handling that they are not cooked and they're not firmed up yet. They still have a lot of whey inside of the curds. And so you can tell when your curds are ready just by the feel. They'll feel drier. They'll shrink up a lot more as they cook, and that whey is expelled from the curds. And then there's also a squeeze test. Now I've not actually been very successful with the squeeze test. I guess because for me, I've not had anybody that I could learn from. Other than YouTube. I've done most of my learning through the books, which is the way I've always learned, is through books. Now with YouTube channels such as Milkslinger or Gavin Weber, he's another one that I listen to occasionally. Very knowledgeable people, at least as far as YouTube is concerned. And I try and learn from both their successes and their mistakes. I'll show you what a squeeze test looks like as soon as I get this broken up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the yogurt that I tried to use is what's causing all of my curds to kind of clump and float. Oh, there's my timer. All right, so for a curd test, what you do is you just take a handful of curds. So I've got small hands, and then you just, let me take some of that out because you just squeeze it and see how it's squeezing out of my hand? I mean, it's staying together, which is actually kind of surprising, but it's not knitting together very well. So that is one test. So when your curds, like when you squeeze it and it really stays together, and it can crumble back up, that's kind of when you know that it's ready. And so the other thing that I look for when I am looking at my curds is, see in here, you can see there's a lot of whey. It's kind of gummy, if you will. So I want that to be drier. So right now these curds are fairly wet still with whey in them. So, and that is what moving them around like what I'm doing will help do. It will help dry them out. and expel that whey. Yeah, that's a real juicy one. Think of a gusher, the candy gushers. That's what this kind of reminds me of. You kind of squish it and the whey will come out. So I'm going to continue doing this for the next 20 minutes or until my temperature gets up to 118, and then I will bring you back. All right, we'll see you in about 20. All right, so it's been 20 minutes since we started stirring the curds, and they're almost up to 118. And they're much drier. And when I do the squeeze test, see, it's not coming out of my hand as like it was, and it is breaking up really well. I mean, it's a little stretchy there, but the thing that we have to keep into account so we don't overcook our curds is that we're going to be putting warm beer over this, so it will continue the cooking process. So I am going to cut the heat, and so the next step is I'm going to line my colander with a butter muslin, and I am going to put all of these curds in the butter muslin, and then I'm going to set up a double boiler, and you'll see why here in a minute. I'm going to drain this and then I will bring you back. All right, so I have my double boiler system set up. Let me show you. So this here is the pan. I'm getting the water hot right now, and then I'm going to place the curds into this pot. Once I place the curds into this pot, then I'm going to put in the beer, the warm beer. So while I was stirring the curds for the 20 minutes, getting it up to the 118, I was warming up the beer at the same time. That way I just make use of my time. So right now I'm just going to add the curds to the pot, and all I'm going to do is just lift it up. Squeeze out some of that whey. And then dump it in. So the goal right now is to keep these curds nice and warm, and that is why the double boiler is important. Now I've seen people, or Jennifer, I believe she took a container and she put hot water in it and put it on top, and that kept the curds warm as well. But I've got the double boiler, so I'm going to make use of it, even though it is more dishes. All right, so here is the warmed beer. Just put that in there like that. And then I'm going to take my clean spurtle and I'm just going to move it around. Now you're going to want to let this soak for 45 minutes. I think I got my beer a little bit too warm. It's melting my curds a little bit, but in for a penny, in for a pound. Okay, so this here is what it looks like. All right, so now we are just going to let this sit in the beer for 45 minutes. Let me give it one last turn. Actually, that beer's not too bad. I mean, temperature-wise. I mean, it's nice and warm. And it is melting the curds a little bit, but there we go. And this water is almost to a boiling point, so I'm just going to turn off the heat because I don't want it to boil. I just want it warm. And there we go. So after the 45 minutes, we are going to add our peppers and our ancho chilies and mix it all in, and then we'll be putting it into a mold. Speaking of molds, I got new molds today. So I ordered them. So today I got the rounded mold, and this here is for Gouda, Edam, primarily, but I think it's a neat shape, so I'll probably do other cheeses in it other than those two. Here's this beast. This here is what cheesemaking.com, or New England Cheese Company, calls a manchego mold. And so it has a solid bottom, but the sides come off, if I can get it off. There it goes. And then it's got this very, very cool design inside. I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to use this for our cheese that we're making right now, because even though the design is very cool, I'm just unsure of everything, because this is the first time that I'm making this cheese. So what I'll probably do is take the insert out and just use this portion, because this here is an 8-pound mold and I really needed something large. And so I think that's what I'm probably going to do. But yeah, so I'm really excited about having this. And I got a couple other ones that are smaller in size, because sometimes you have that, just that little bit left over. And so I got a mold that would accommodate that as well. So anyways, I will see you guys in 45 minutes. Yeah, this is so much like mozzarella, it isn't funny. But I've got to finish. I'm not about to waste all of this. And who knows, it could end up being pretty amazing stuff. The other thing that I would do if I did this again is not make my beer so hot to begin with. I am going to start putting this into the mold. I'm going to move it into the sink so it can drain a little bit. Yeah, if you can see, this is so much like mozzarella. It's just very stringy. But I really think once it presses and goes through all of that and the clipping, I still think it'll be okay. Okay, all I'm trying to do at this moment is just get some of the moisture out so I don't make a mess in my oven. So your cheesecloth or your butter muslin is going to look absolutely horrid. So this here is what we have, and this here, like I said, is an 8-pound mold. Or at least with the insert, it would be 8 pounds. And so I took the insert out, and all I'm going to do is just cover it up. And get my follower. I'm going to sit this in the sink until I get my press up here. Okay, 1 second, let me get the press. All right, so I have my press right here. Move my dinner out of the way. Okay, so here, let me swing you over so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I've got my press, and all I'm going to do is put my mold up on here. Oh, just barely fits. Oh, I'm making a mess on my floor. Alrighty. Alright, well that's gonna have to do. All right, so we want light pressure on the mold for the first half hour, and then when we go to flip it in 30 minutes, then we're going to take it out of the press. I might have to get another press because this here, I'm just not happy with the way this here looks. Let's see. All right, let's see. Let's take this apart. No, I can't do that because this is the only one that fits in my oven. Oh, this is frustrating. See if I can push it in a little bit more. Nope. I need to get pressure on all of this. Well, the only thing that I can think of to do is put a board on top and then a textbook or 2 or 3, because this is not going to work. Actually, what I'm going to do is put a tail up and keep that from sliding. All right, so I've got a couple textbooks, and combined they weigh about 8-10 pounds. So I'm going to place this in the oven like this, and then very carefully put the textbooks on top. So that's the game plan. My husband just made pizza for dinner. So this is really warm, so I won't need to put it on proof right away. But I do want to move that rack down. Nothing like an anatomy and physiology and a chemistry book from college that helps you out in a pinch. One of the key things that I learned from Jennifer when she was making this was on each flip you need to use a clean cheesecloth or else your cheese will stick like none other. So we're going to do that. On the first flip in 30 minutes, let me turn my timer on. We'll take it out of the mold, we'll flip it, we'll put a new cheesecloth on, then it goes back in. And by the time we do that 30 minutes, then I'll set the oven to proof, because by then it'll be cooled off enough to where I'll need that additional heat. So I will see you back in 30 minutes. All right, it is time for our first flip. So I'm going to take it out of the oven, and it looks like I'm almost out of battery again. So give me a minute. I'm going to take our cheese out of the oven. That kind of sounds wrong. But anyway. And get these off. So that's one bad thing that the textbooks don't help out with, is it makes the cheese all wonky. So I'm going to have to try and figure out how to get this a little bit more level. So I'm just getting the cheesecloth wet. I'm going to use hot water here in a sec. So this is an older cheesecloth that I'm going to use just because, well, look at this. This is like kind of gross looking. But it is what it is. I'm going to empty this out and rinse it. I know it doesn't say that in the directions, but I'm going to. So you want to peel your cheesecloth or your butter muslin off very carefully in case it does want to stick. Actually, I'm wondering something. 1 minute. Okay, so I got a couple different sizes. I'm going to close this up. So I got a couple different sizes of molds of the Manchego mold. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and fit this into here. I'm not sure if it's going to work. But if I can get that into here, then I can get it into the press. Oh my goodness, this is so wet. Okay, Jennifer, I totally get where you're coming from on this falling apart. Oh my goodness, what a mess. All right, in it goes. So this breaking apart is the same issue that Jennifer had when she made this. So I thought that I wouldn't have that problem like she did because she didn't change her cheesecloth or anything, but I did, or I am. So we'll see how it works. And I'm going to put it on much higher pressure. And it's a much smaller mold, so we'll just see. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I'm out the money that I put into this. But we'll try and salvage it. And honestly, I have never had cheese to act this way, ever. I mean, I've had cheese stick before, but nothing like this. Oh my goodness. Alright, so you guys are witness to what could potentially be an epic fail. Don't know yet. And let's set this to proof. Start. Okay. Yes, I am putting massive amounts of pressure on this because I don't want it to fall apart on me. So I am going to have some sticking out. I can already see that. But if this works, when I flip it, it should compact a lot better. And then the next time I flip it, that there should settle out. That's the game plan. So we'll see if it works. And there we go. So I'm going to keep that in there for 2 hours and just leave it alone. And then I'll flip it another time and we'll see how it goes. So I will see you either in 2 hours or later. Depends on how late it gets. My time is already 10 o'clock and I am running out of steam. So we'll see if I do the third flip on camera or not, but I will try. No guarantees though. But either way, I will see you later. Thanks. Well, good morning, friends, and welcome back to Prairie Acres. So this is the last segment of this video, but I just wanted to come on this morning and show you what we have accomplished. So yesterday we made the dragon's milk and fire, and I've got it somewhat shrink wrapped. I had to make a bag in order to fit it, but my vacuum sealer, I had to do it in phases because it just wasn't long enough to hit everything. So not all of the air is taken out, but most of it is. And so I dry salted it because I didn't want to take the chance of it falling apart in the brine. Now this cheese, I did the final flip last night, probably at about 12:15 in the morning. And I tell you what, y'all, it was the most hardest cheese to make all of the time that I've been making cheese. The cheesecloth, no matter how many times I swapped it out, because I put a new cheesecloth after every flip, and it just stuck like none other. And it was getting very frustrating. It was cracking. It was just a very difficult cheese to manipulate. So last night before I went to bed, I took it out of the oven where I had it on the proof setting because that's what the instructions said. I rewrapped it and then I flipped it, rewrapped it, and then I put it back in the press with 80-pound weight, and then I just left it there and I went to bed because I was incredibly exhausted. I didn't even get the opportunity to make butter yesterday, and I really needed to. But this cheese was like just dominating my entire evening. So anyways, I took it out this morning. It was sticking really bad, but I just very carefully just kind of peeled it up, and so that helped a lot. But it took like almost a half an hour just to take the cheesecloth off of that cheese. And so from Jennifer's post or her video on YouTube about this cheese, and you can find her on YouTube, it's Milkslinger. Really, really neat lady. I love the cheeses that she makes, and I like the fact that she's not afraid to show her mistakes and all of that good stuff. So anyways, I had the same issues that she was having where it was sticking and everything. So anyways, I took it out of the press this morning, very carefully took the cheesecloth off, and I just dry salted it. I mean, I loaded on the salt. And I'm sorry that I didn't get it on camera for you, but I just want it to be done. Will I ever make this cheese again? I honestly don't know. It was expensive to make and incredibly time consuming. I mean, this was literally the cheese. If somebody said, what cheese will you never make again? I would probably put that at the top of the list. So with that being said, it's going to go back into the cheese fridge and it's going to do its thing. What I want to show you is all of the Colby Jack that we made. So this here is all of the Colby Jack that we made yesterday. Right now I'm trying to, it sat in the brine all night, and even though it had some salt in it when I made it, I just wanted to make sure that it had really good salt content. So I brined it overnight. I just took it out of the brine and dried it off, and now I'm just letting it air dry as much as I can because I am going away today, so I'm just letting it air dry. But look how beautiful that looks. That is amazing. Now there's a little bit of cracking, but I think once I get it vacuum sealed, it should be fine. So last but not least, this here is an update, so to speak, on the Budakos. So this has been in the fridge for a couple weeks now, in the cheese fridge. And if you look, the geotrichum is doing its job. So it's got a very nice bloomy rind on it. And there is some molding, and I'm going to be taking that off. And I'm going to be vacuum sealing these today. So ordinarily, what, at least from what I understand, there are some cheesemakers that will allow that mold to populate the entire surface and just let it age or continue to age. I am not going to do that. I'm just going to take a brush. I'll show you what I have. So I'm just going to take this brush and I'm going to just take the cheese and I'm just going to scrape that mold off. So there's some on the side here, and I'm just going to take it and brush it off, and then I am going to vacuum seal it. And that should cover all of my cheeses while I'm gone, and then my husband won't have to deal with it. So that is what I have for you this morning. So I want to thank you so much for joining me on this very long journey on cheese making. I hope you learned some stuff. If you decide to ever give the lion's milk and fire a try, let me know in the comments how you did. Like I said, it was a very frustrating cheese. I honestly don't know if I will ever make it again, but we'll see. But everything is just looking beautiful. And so we're getting geared up for the Lumberton Farmers Market and Vendors Fair Christmas Market, which is going to be on December 13th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. I believe that is what the time is. Go on Facebook, check it out. It will have the exact times, and I'll get the exact time the closer we get. So anyways, I just want to thank you again. Let me know in the comments what you think. I wish you a blessed day, a blessed weekend, and we will see you back. Thank you.